Hi there, welcome back to Nico Talks Hockey. Today, I want to talk about the top 10 GMs, the top 10 general managers in the NHL right now who are on the hot seat. They have a greater than 0%, more than that, greater than, maybe 50% chance of being fired within the next season. If things go poorly, if things go really bad, maybe if they maybe if things just don't go to plan, maybe they miss playoffs by a hair, maybe they get into playoffs but lose pretty badly, get swept, just don't meet the goals that their organization is trying to meet. I could absolutely see them getting canned, and their organization choosing to go in a different direction. So without further ado, I'm going to go right into it and start at number 10, with number 1 eventually being the most likely, in my opinion, of being fired come next season. So at number 10, though, I have Patrick Alvine of the Vancouver Canucks. So I know they split duties. He splits duties with Jeremy Rutherford over there in Vancouver. But Vancouver last season, at least, right, was the kind of staple of just dumpster fire. Their whole organization was just, oh man, just what not to do. And I think Patrick Alvine is a good GM. I really do. But whether it was the sound bites, or you could point to maybe they should have been able to right the ship that was the horrible toxic locker room situation there with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. Who's to blame there? It's up to opinion, really, because no one really knows except for a select few people what happened there, and who was truly to blame there about why it all went down the way it did last season for Vancouver. But either way, Patrick Alvine, if he doesn't, if he's not able to, if Vancouver as an organization is not able to right the ship, I could absolutely see Patrick Alvine kind of being the person who takes the blame here, and is kind of the person to take the fall guy, so to speak. And maybe they could see a new GM take hold there in Vancouver. Going on to number 9, I have Bill Armstrong of the Utah Mammoth. He's been GM for a while there. I think expectations are absolutely to make playoffs. Kind of like giving back for a second for Vancouver. I think expectations are absolutely to make the playoffs, and I think those expectations are there for Utah as well. Got to make the playoffs, and if they miss playoffs, I could see their new owner in Utah. I could see him wanting to make his own mark, and he got the team, but maybe he wants to appoint his own general manager, right? So maybe if he could see them not going in the direction that he wants and not being fast enough. I see the owner over there in Utah being someone of action, to want to see results quickly. And so if Bill Armstrong, who I see as someone who's kind of patient, maybe he's too patient for the guy over there in Utah. So I could see him getting fired and his seat being pretty warm if Utah gets off to a bad start or even misses playoffs. Moving on to number 8, Bill Guerin. Now this is kind of crazy because I do think that he's a really good GM. I really like what he's been building in Minnesota, but that doesn't necessarily equate to being on the hot seat. Your seat being pretty warm. It means results. If the results aren't there, then maybe you get canned. And with Minnesota, they've been a good team, and there's so much to justify why he probably shouldn't be fired, but I'm just talking predictions wise. And predictions wise, maybe the owners or anyone above Guerin in Minnesota in that organization, maybe they view it as like, look, you've been here for a while, and we need to start seeing steady playoffs. If they miss it, or if they go out in the first round again, they could point and say, look, we need progress, and maybe first round getting out isn't cutting it for whoever is in charge over there. So I could see Bill Guerin, as crazy as that is, and as in my opinion, unjust. That would be an unjust firing. I could still see it happen. I could see it being possible. Moving on to number 7, again with each name I say, each GM I say, I think it's more likely, the higher likelihood it is for them to be fired potentially if things go bad next season, if goals aren't met. Number 7, I have Pat Verbeek of the Anaheim Ducks. I'm not the biggest fan. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be doing my top 5 GMs and top 5 coaches. That video is going to be coming out. Those videos are going to be coming out pretty soon. But Pat Verbeek is definitely not there in terms of my favorite GMs. I am not a fan of how long it's taken, this rebuild, and I'm not the biggest fan of the draft choices and then the free agency signings and then the trades. I could go on and on, but Pat Verbeek is someone who I think has had too many bullets, and I think he's had one too many chances, I think. So let's say Joe Quenneville doesn't work out. If Joe Quenneville, his big, grand slam hack, if it doesn't work out, if the Ducks get off to a miserable start, if they're a lottery team next season, I don't think that Pat Verbeek necessarily gets fired if they don't make playoffs. But if they're, truly, if they're tanking, yeah, I could see a world where Verbeek gets fired, and then it's, that's bad news for Quenneville as well, because he was, Verbeek's guy, and he went up to bat for him, and is putting himself kind of at the end of a barrel in a PR standpoint, right? So yeah, not great if the Ducks. This is a huge season for the Ducks and for Pat Verbeek. Moving on to number 6, just missing the top 5, I have Chris Booger McFarland of the Colorado Avalanche. He got the raise the season after, or the offseason after the Colorado Avalanche won the Cup in 2022. Joe Sakic moving up to president, and Chris McFarland getting the GM spot. I'm mixed on what my opinion is of him and his tenure as GM. I like a lot of the moves he's made, and then I've really disliked some of the moves he's made, most notably moving on from, Mikko Rantanen. That, I think, in my prediction at least, will haunt that organization for many years to come. I understand the logic, I get it. They decide to prioritize building out lots of different spots in the roster instead of star, a true elite star. But I disagree with that. I disagreed with that decision when it was made, and I disagree with it to this day. So, and now that they lose to Mikko Rantanen and the Stars in the first round, if they suffer a similar fate, let's say they lose in the first round, or God forbid they have a horrible season, miss playoffs, yeah, I could see maybe Joe Sakic taking over that role again full time and kind of cutting out the middleman and saying goodbye to Chris McFarland. Moving on to top 5, although he is the 5th on my hottest seat in terms of a GM, I think the next 4 are truly true hot seats where it wouldn't take a ton for them to get fired. But at number 5, I do think that his seat is pretty warm just because the expectations are getting there. It's Tom Fitzgerald of the New Jersey Devils. Tom Fitzgerald is another one who I think is actually a really good GM. I just think he's gotten somewhat unlucky with all the injuries that New Jersey's had to face. I think that Tom Fitzgerald is probably not as highly rated as he should be as a GM. I think he's done a great job at drafting. I think he's done a great job at bringing in, good talent. The injury bug, right? Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Nico Hischier, all their top guys. I love what he did with the goaltender situation, bringing in Jacob Markstrom and then keeping Allen as well. I think it was a masterstroke. It's just, when it comes to expectations, the Devils probably should have won some more playoff rounds by now. And so maybe upper management thinks that maybe it's time for a new voice, time for new leadership to guide them and break through that mold. And because I think a lot of people, myself included, saw the Devils as maybe the next great team to build through the draft and finally break through. And it's been kind of middling, where they missed playoffs last season and they make it, but just this season, and they go out with a whimper. So yeah, not great looks, but I do think that Tom Fitzgerald is a great GM. It's time for results. The Devils have a huge season upon them. Going to the top four, this is where I think the seats get truly hot, and it would not take much, I think, for a GM to get fired here. Don Sweeney at number 4 of the Boston Bruins. People have been calling for his head for a while, and for good reason. I don't think he's a very good GM. At the very least, I think that he is someone who has his time is up. He's had too long here as the general manager of the Boston Bruins franchise, and I think it is time for a new voice. I think a lot of Boston fans would agree with me. Let me know, at least in the comments, if you're a Boston fan and you think you agree. But yeah, I mean, the handling of the Marchand situation and just, not being able to, you just keep getting older. And then like the Lindholm situation, not being able to solve that number 1 center spot or even number 2 center spot. I just don't think Don Sweeney's cut out for the job at this point. So I could absolutely see, I know he's real good friends with Cam Neely, but at some point you have to recognize what's going on. And I don't really know, to be quite frank, what the expectations are of the Boston Bruins this coming season. Do they expect to be like, okay, yeah, this is a retooling year. We're okay with finishing bottom 5 even? I don't know. I heard, but I also saw that Cam Neely's like, no, we're going for it. Our expectations, the Stanley Cup. So we'll see. But I think he's got a very hot seat. But there are 3 other GMs who have even hotter seats. And starting with number 3, Chris Drury, the general manager of the New York Rangers. I know he got a re-up. He got a multiple-year extension. But I think that was to solve, a potential lame duck situation. You never want a lame duck GM. Otherwise, you probably have even less respect than Chris Drury has in New York. By all reports, he does not control the room. He's lost the room in New York. I imagine that's why he actually traded a lot of the core players he had there in New York. I imagine that a lot of them were not fond of him anymore, and so he had to get them out of there. I think he's liked there by the owner there in New York, but New York is very fickle. It does not accept. It's not it doesn't complacent, and it will move whatever they got to move and fire whoever they have to fire to see success. And for that, I respect it. I respect the organization for that, but I think maybe they're like that too much of the time. But even so, I don't think that Chris Drury's done the best of jobs. Don't think he's a terrible GM. Don't think he's even a bad GM. But his seat is warm. If the Rangers miss playoffs by hiring Mike Sullivan, if they miss playoffs, if they just miss it, I could see him staying. But if they really have the season that they had this season, where it's just more of a really chaotic tire fire kind of season, yeah, I'm predicting he gets fired. At number 2, the GM that is my favorite to talk about, I think, just because of there's so many differing opinions on him. Even within Detroit, it's Steve Yzerman. My prediction is, one of my big predictions for this upcoming season, I think Steve Yzerman gets fired. It's sad because I actually really like Steve Yzerman as a player. I think he was an unbelievable player, seeing old clips of him and just knowing his stat lines and just what he was able to do in Detroit when he was a player. Unbelievable. I have the utmost respect for what he was able to do as a GM in Tampa and building what was eventually 2-time Cup winner in Tampa Bay. But let's face the facts. I think that while he's done an okay job in Detroit, it's taking too long. And I think that people's patience is nearly up for this rebuild in Detroit. And he's never been able to properly assess defensemen and their talent and how to bring in defensemen through trades or free agency. He's good at drafting them, Edvinsson and Seider, but he's not so great at trading for them or free agency like Sherratt, Hall, Petrie. I could go on. So yeah, I think that will be his undoing, and he is at number 2 for my red hot seats for general managers. But moving on to number 1, it couldn't be anyone else. It's Kevin Adams of the Buffalo Sabres. His seat should be the hottest because, in my opinion, he's the worst general manager in the league, and he shouldn't have a job right now. Look, I don't know him as a person. I don't wish him any bad, but Buffalo Sabres, they need a new GM. They need a new owner. But, when is that going to happen? But they absolutely need a new GM. They need someone who, with a fresh set of eyes, to look at this roster and make better decisions and be able to convince players that, this is a team that will eventually turn around and get it on the right track. Kevin Adams should be worried for his job because I could see him, let's say the Buffalo Sabres get off to a 1-4 start in the first 5 games, could see him being fired, could see Lindy Ruff being fired. So yeah, not great in Buffalo, but when's the last time it has been good? Sorry, Buffalo fans. I grieve with you because I do want them to be good as well. But yeah, that's my list. That's my list of the top 10 GMs, general managers in the league that I think have the hottest seats, with Kevin Adams having the hottest seat of them all. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. And I will see you guys in the next video.